Hello YouTube family, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I decided to hop on a bandwagon and do the eyeshadow tag. So without further ado, let's get started. So for my newest eyeshadow palette, I'm going to have to say it is the Natasha Denona palette. I just purchased this palette. I just received it 2 days ago. Super happy that I received this palette. Super happy that I got it on sale. So yeah, super happy that I have this palette. So yeah, my newest palette is the Natasha Denona palette, Tropic palette. My oldest palette, I would have to say, is the Urban Decay Naked palette. I done had this one for quite some time now. And so yeah, so you know this is a very everyday palette. So I purchased this when I was first getting into eyeshadow palettes. So yeah, I done had this one for quite a while. So yeah, for my oldest eyeshadow palette is the Urban Decay Naked palette. For my most expensive palette, I'm going to have to go with the Natasha Denona Blue and Purple palette, 28 pan. This is my most expensive eyeshadow palette. Here go the colors. Blue and purple, very pretty. Self-explanatory. Blues and purples and some browns. For my most affordable palette, I'm going to have to go with the Blue Sky palette right here. Here's what it looks like. Very pretty in blue. Yeah. And when I looked up this palette online, they say it's a dupe for the Jeffree Star Blue Blood, but I don't own any of his palettes. So yeah, this is my blue palette right here. My most affordable palette, I'm sorry, I already did that. So my everyday palette would be Huda Rich palette, the nude palette. This is what it looks like. Very neutral, everyday palette, work appropriate, everyday appropriate. You can wear this palette anywhere. Yeah, and here's what it looks like. So for my colorful palette, I chose the ABH Norvina palette, Volume 3. Here's what it looks like. Very pretty, colorful, summery, and nice for the spring eyeshadows. And very wearable as well. For my smallest palette, I'm going to have to go with the Charlotte Tilbury palette right here, because this was much smaller than I expected it to be for the price. And open it up. This is the Super Blue palette right here. So for my biggest palette, I'm going to have to go with the Moschino and Sephora collab and the Laptop palette right there. Then you got the little switch right here to switch out the colors, so you can you have to move from the palette. You could just use the brush and swipe, 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 and there you go, and move on to the next color. My best memory palette, I will have to say, is the Urban Decay Roller Girl palette right here. I purchased this in 2010, 2011. I just had to. You see the African American girl right here. You see the afro. You see the skates. Yeah, this was a must-have for me. So I had to purchase this, and this will stay in my collection indefinitely. I don't care how old it gets. And I've lately, or recently, or ever, I haven't seen another packaging that look like this. I might be wrong, but for me, I haven't seen another packaging that looks like this. So the palette that I chose that's worth the hype is the Juvia's Place Masquerade Mini Palette. I feel like all Juvia's Places are worth the hype. They're affordable, they pigmented. So yeah. So it was hard for me to choose one, but I just chose the Masquerade because I really, really love this one. And yeah, I think it's worth the hype. Not worth the hype for me was the ColourPop Honey palette. Now, before I purchased this palette, I went online and I looked up some tutorials for deeper skin tones with this palette, and they said that it was a nice palette for our skin tone. So I was like, okay, so I went ahead and I purchased it. But for me, this was like a no-go. I had to put in too much work for this palette to show up on me vibrantly. So yeah, so that's why I say it wasn't worth the hype for me, in my opinion, and for my skin tone. So yeah, wasn't worth the hype for me. So for my favorite palette and my favorite brand, I'm going to have to go with none other than Mother Pat. And the palette that I chose was the the palette that I chose was the Star Wars Decadence palette. Here it is right here. This packaging is so beautiful. Love the packaging. Now this palette was hard to get. It took time for me to receive it. It took time for me to order it. But I'm super happy that I was able to get my hands on it. And I can use these colors right here as one eyeshadow looks. Or I can use them for eyeliner. Or I can use them in a crease. Or I can use them just to give me depth in the outer corner. So yeah, I'm really, really, really happy that I got this palette. Even though it was a hassle, at the end it was well worth it. And this palette is gorgeous. And so for my most used palette, this might come as a surprise, but I'm going to have to go with the new Huda Beauty palette. And this palette right here. I always find myself with this palette in my rotation. I really love the colors. They really pop on my skin tone. And I don't have to put in much work with this palette. And for like the lighter shades over here, I'll either just put them under my brow bone or I'll set my entire lid with them. And then this concealer or whatever that was, I removed that probably the second I got it. It was horrible. Didn't like that. But everything else on the palette, I love. Alright, YouTube, thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for listening and watching my eyeshadow tag. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And until next time, YouTube, peace.